Yeah, first up, the title of my presentation is going to be What Are We Crazy? Indie VR Development. Uh, I like to think that I'm funny, so you guys get to listen to that name. When I signed up, I did not realize this is #1, so hopefully you guys are excited and you're ready to go and you're going to forgive any mistakes in flow. So, my name is Aaron Lutz, as Bob said, and we all watched the Facebook Connect stream, I assume, and I'm sure there's a lot of big brain, big money talk coming up. I looked at some of the other talks and yeah, I'm definitely on the kiddie end of the pool, but I'm okay with that. So I'm going to give you guys a nice and easy start, and we're going to talk about just ground level stuff for the next half hour or so. Quick roadmap for my talk. There's the two most important things in VR gaming, as far as I'm concerned. Why should you get into indie VR development? What is indie VR development like? And then life in the trenches. My advice for indies. Uh, Real quick though, I'm just going to give you my bona fides, that way you know why I'm here and why you should listen to me a little bit. You can tune out, that's cool. My name is Aaron Lutz, I'm a 3D artist, and I primarily work in VR. I've got some pretty cool stuff on my resume. The most recognizable one, probably for you folks, is going to be Rec Room. I worked at Rec Room for about 6 months. Pretty fun time. I've done corporate applications for use in like meetings and gatherings and other weird stuff for Visa and Paramount and a few other companies kind of like that. We actually made the Quiet Place VR game, which was pretty fun. My most recent game that I released with my own company, Overrun Games, was Arcaxer. We made a previous title called Wave Magic that never quite got off the ground. And we've done a bunch of really cool VR-focused, XR-focused hackathons. We've done stuff for Amazon, or not Amazon, sorry, for mobile companies. We've done stuff for the HoloLens with Microsoft. We've done a hack for the Bose AR system, which was unfortunately axed. So we've been kind of around in VR for a very long time, and I've always been in consumer-facing VR, which is just kind of where the fun's at for me. I want to talk a little bit more about Rec Room, just because even though it was a small time there, and most of what I've learned, I learned from looking inside, from the outside. It was a really important company because they have figured out a lot of this really neat stuff, and a lot of the metaverse things that we're starting to talk about now, you can see case studies in Rec Room across the board. So it's a really fun game. It's got some really neat ideas, and the people running it are business geniuses. They figured out how to get a lot of money and how to make this really cool thing that a lot of people want to be involved in. And it gave me 3 main takeaways. People can be immersed in low-res VR. In Rec Room, you can straight up count polygons on models. You can almost count pixels sometimes. The game is not a big, heavy game. It runs on almost anything. If there was still a Gear VR, really, with support these days, they would probably be on it. And that's why they were one of the first successful games to be on the Quest, because it's low end. It taught me a really weird lesson that I guess seems obvious now, but social interaction is incredibly important to VR users. And that's why their lounge attitude, their hanging out with your friends doing stuff thing, is working so well. And then the third most important piece for me as a developer has just been stringing together a bunch of things that are kind of connected but not really connected. We'll make it into a full game as long as you have some plot, some structure, some overall vibe to tie it all together. There's really, it's a really neat thing that they've done there. Enough advertising for Rec Room. I'm My main company, the company that I own with my best friend Anthony, is called Overrun Games. It started back in our senior year of college. Anthony bought a DK2, an Oculus DK2, before touch sensors, before those motion towers they had to set up and try to not cover, and he was absolutely, completely hooked. I wasn't sold right away, but he had some fun ideas, and I went with him. And it's been a wild journey. Right now it's still pretty insane. There's still, not a ton of user base. There's still janky SDKs. There's still a lot of stuff to learn. But back then, it was completely insane. Our first project didn't get off the ground. It was supposed to be like a mech boxing game, kind of like Pacific Rim. You were going to be inside the mech with arms punching, and it was going to be driven by a controller or a mouse and keyboard. And we couldn't quite get it to work. Our next project was called Wave Magic VR, and it used the Leap Motion, which had an IR hand tracking device for the headset. Super simple stuff. It was like 20 bucks at the time. Somehow it tracked every joint in your fingers. It really was magic, and they were a super cool company. They're still out there, And yeah, that game didn't go anywhere either. It kind of fell apart just because we started off with a lot of mistakes and then we built on top of that with more mistakes. But failure is the best teacher, and we got taught a lot with that one. Okay, so that's enough about me, and it was all said very rapidly, so thanks for sticking with me so far. Next up is going to be insights and opinions, although it's mostly opinions, but hopefully there's some insights in there. Um, I'm going to talk to you first about immersion, one of the two most important things I think in VR. Generally, one of the first things people bring up when they don't like a game or when it was bad is they say it broke immersion. I couldn't get immersed. Nothing about this was immersive. But what does that really mean as a VR developer? When I was a kid, I could get immersed in anything. My favorite book series was about an aardvark that went to elementary school. And then later on, my favorite heroes were superheroes in high school. It didn't make any sense. My favorite video games, Earthbound, Paper Mario, super low res, super weird, super trippy stuff. But after an hour of playing the game and getting super excited for it, I'm immersed every single time, 20 years later. Um, in VR, immersion is your game to lose. It is done. You have the unprecedented futuristic ability to just shove your players inside of the game. And right now, the VR base is not just made out of users, it's made out of power users. Almost everyone in VR cares about VR. These are people who read Ready Player One and they said, yes, that's the future for me. And they are more or less as excited for games and metaverse and everything to do with VR as people like the devs are. Um, so you have a really dedicated user base and a really easy time setting up immersion. Back in the day, when there was only a handful of really janky games on there, it was rough. Every game, which me and Anthony played, every game had new tricks, new ideas, new weird things that they were trying to make work, and none of it ever quite worked. But the only time I ever really had my immersion broken was in a game of Rec Room when my camera height got set up wrong for some reason, and I was about 6 inches off the ground. So all the vertexes were piled around me, and my hands were jumped up near my face. And I still played for the next hour because it was a new game and it was exciting, and eventually I got that worked out. So really, when it comes to VR, you have immersion. You're given immersion. It's all about what you do with it. We in ArcAxter use a really cool combination of first and third person. At least I think it's cool. And the settings get pretty weird and abstract and odd. But myself and our players all feel immersed the entire time. So we take advantage of that. The game is room scale. If you check on Steam, it'll tell you it takes 1.5 meters by 1 meter to play, and that's fairly accurate. We have enemies leaping at you, we have enemies flying at you, we have spells and spike balls and all sorts of nonsense bouncing around the room, and you have to interact with it, and you have to avoid it, and you have to be with it. My favorite example of this is, it's called the Buggle. It's one of the first things I made for the game. It's a fly with a diesel engine strapped to its back, and it flies directly at your face. That's its attack. It backs up and then it goes straight at your face. And the first time, there's some gifs out there of YouTubers, their first time encountering the Buggle, and they hit the floor. It happened to me too. I had rug burn on my face from trying to not get hit by it. And that's a really fun thing because that is such a silly monster and it's such a straightforward attack, but in VR, it becomes real. My real favorite example of immersion in our game is that we have this thing called the stack in the middle of our main area, and it's this huge tower that spirals into the sky. And if you look at it on a flat screen, it's fun. I like it. I did a good job on the design, but it's not like it's not insane. It's not ominous. It's not oppressive. But when you're in VR and you stand at the base of it and you have to tilt your head all the way back, and you still can't quite see the top of it because it's piercing through the skybox in a kind of tricky way. That's something that you just can't do in a regular flat screen game. It's a simple trick, but it just could not exist. In a regular flat screen game, you walk up to a gigantic citadel, they can do a cinematic, but once you're on top of it, it's just another wall. It's just another large gray texture. And VR really lets the little things become so much more impressive. Speaking of the little things, this one really took me by surprise. This is the second biggest thing I think in VR, although you could swap those back and forth. Social interactions. It's what people are here for. It's become really increasingly obvious just because Gorilla Tag took off. Gorilla Tag is the most popular game for VR ever. And it's janky, and it's made by one dude, and it kind of works, but people love it because they get to do it with as many of their friends as they can gather that have VR. And it's because people love social interactions. In a flat screen game, it can make social interactions, Discord, talking to your friends, shooting the crap as you go, can make a game last for a while longer. In VR, that social interaction, it can be the whole thing. That's it. You don't need anything besides social interaction and something to do with your hands. People are hungry for a new way to have social interactions, and what they really need is a social setting and a parlor game to keep them going. I'm not saying this at all in a negative way. In college, me and my best friends all lived on the same floor, and all I had to do was walk up and down the hall knocking on doors to get Magic or Dungeons and Dragons or a board game going. And that was, we just hung out, we made stupid jokes, and we played a game with our hands. That's really one of the big things people are looking for in VR, and it's really neat to see the way that people are filling that niche. So this is my sales pitch for why you, the indie dev at home, the person watching this that's thinking, maybe I should get into VR, this is why you should get into VR. VR is a wasteland. There's almost nothing. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of games out there, but most of them have 45 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours at the upper end of content. There are a handful of games that have some neat stuff that you can come back for and do again. But in general, most of what keeps people going is that there are only 10 games in VR that they like, so they keep playing those 10 games. There's been a few AA's, like Turtle Rock, who just released Back 4 Blood. They made some pretty cool VR experiences back in the day, but they've moved on from that. And Half-Life Alyx is an obvious notable example of a large VR game. It's 15 hours, it's massive, it's beautiful, and it takes a computer that costs the size of my first car, or costs the price of my first car. But other than that, there's no weight in indie development. It's just us little guys, and it's just us messing around having fun. Personally, I was talking to Bob about this, I dread the day when EA or Blizzard or whomever announces that they are going to have a VR wing and that they're never giving it up. So, right now, if you're thinking about making VR, do it. Get in there, mess it up, have some fun. So that's my sales pitch on it. Now I want to talk to you about indie life. I'm not going to talk too much about the nuts and bolts of indie VR life, just because it is more or less, it's boring, it's obvious, and it's the same as indie life anywhere else in the world. Hopefully, you can kind of understand what indie life is, but we do have some stuff that's new and unique to VR. Right now, it's really cool. The user base for VR is small, and it's built out of people who care about VR as much as we do. Like, if you look at a personality profile of an indie dev, of a VR developer and a VR user, it's a shaded in circle. That's the overlap. It's 100%. Some of us just know how to use C++. Not me. That's why I have a business partner. But the really cool thing about that is we've amassed a pretty large Discord where we are able to communicate with a lot of people en masse and rapidly. Our game has no matchmaking, but we still have hundreds of users on here talking to each other, talking to ourselves, and we've built a pretty cool community there. We've been able to build some really close relationships with really powerful, popular VR YouTubers. And again, this is a small microcosm, so we're talking 10, 20, 100,000 subs, not millions of subs, but still, they are the rock stars of VR, and it's really neat to see, and we have developed such really cool relationships with them, even though we're two guys with no money. Our reach is extremely outsized when you look at our history and the size of our company. And hey, I'm right here talking to you guys right now, and I've been lucky enough to find this dedicated bunch of nerds who care about the future as much as I do, and hopefully video games. So some advice that I have for aspiring indie devs. There's a lot of really successful indie VR games right now in the last year that have come out that are pretty exciting, and almost none of them have anything in common, which is a little weird. Arcaxer is an action-oriented RPG. And yes, I do get to slide myself in the front because it's my talk. Ragnarok is like Guitar Hero, but just for the drums, and it's for Vikings, and you're guiding a long ship down a canal while flailing your arms. Demio is a group miniature Dungeons and Dragons simulator. where you and your friends control D&D characters, and that's like that's the game. Warplanes is a flight sim. We've had quite a few, but Warplanes is the new one, and it's super fun, and people are all over it. And one thing you might notice is none of these games have anything in common besides they are in VR. And that can be way too much variance if you're looking for what kind of a trend to chase. Trying to find a common thread in that is tough. But to me, what that really means is that anything can work. Anything that you care about can work. I spend a lot of time marketing our game and trying to find what to do next. And if you crawl around on Reddit, you will find people asking for new RPGs, new sandbox games, new puzzle games, new shooters, new job sims. People want to learn what it's like to be on an assembly line in VR, just because if you gamify it, it's fun. And VR is just this whole new dimension that people are super excited to explore every nook and cranny of. So what you really should do is build the game you want to play. Again, the user base is a circle of a Venn diagram. They are you, and you know what they want because it's what you want. Make games that make yourself happy, and you will find those people who also wanted that same thing. My advice would be to start making stuff, start trying stuff, start hacking away little games, and start hacking away ideas, and just get it going in Unity, and like throw away your notebooks and just make things. Definitely hop on social media, which is dangerous advice in general, but take your prototype videos and do what we did. We started posting on Reddit, and we barely had a game functioning. We had a Discord running before we had a demo on SideQuest, and our players would tell us what they were looking for and what they would want and what they were responding to. And that is really, it's amazing what that kind of feedback can do for you. Not only is it exciting, not only is it motivational, it really helps you to kind of bounce those ideas around. And definitely, yeah, you need to just get up there and start making games and getting them on SideQuest. SideQuest is the easiest, best platform in the world. Super simple stuff. You won't get to everyone, but you don't want to get to everyone when you have ultra rough prototypes. You will get to the people who care and the people who will give you feedback. Blast your name all over Reddit. I cannot wait to see what this next batch of indie developers have to make, because the last year has been astounding and the market's only getting more interesting. So that's definitely, that's my advice for any aspiring indie VR devs. Okay, that's all I got. Bob, I said I had about 20 minutes. I kind of ripped through in about 15, but I'm definitely